Why buying Greenland would cost trillions and solve nothing. In the high-stakes game of global power, nations are always looking for an edge, a move that could secure their future, check their rivals, and redraw the map of influence. For the United States, facing a new era of fierce resource competition, a plan has resurfaced that sounds to some like a geopolitical masterstroke. It's a hugely expensive proposition centered on one massive ice-covered island, and it's being pitched as the ultimate way to break free from China's economic chokehold. The idea is to buy Greenland. On the surface, you can almost see the logic. A vast, untapped territory, supposedly brimming with the critical minerals the modern world is desperate for. A permanent strategic foothold in the high north, perfectly positioned to monitor Russian and Chinese ambitions. It's been framed as a modern-day Louisiana purchase, a bold, visionary move to secure America's future. But behind the grand strategy, there's a reality check buried in brutal, simple math. The numbers reveal that this trillion-dollar gamble isn't a masterstroke at all. It's a fantasy that would leave the United States trillions poorer while solving almost nothing. To understand why a frozen island of 57,000 people has become a fixation in the halls of power, you have to understand the invisible crisis of the 21st century, the battle for critical minerals. Those aren't just obscure elements on the periodic table, they are the lifeblood of the modern economy. Your smartphone, electric vehicles, advanced servers, and even sophisticated defense systems, from fighter jets to missile guidance, all rely on a group of metals known as rare earth elements. For decades, the world outsourced the dirty, difficult, and expensive job of mining and refining these materials. And one country with a deliberate, long-term strategy stepped in to dominate that market: China. This was no accident. It was the result of a coordinated, decades-long plan to subsidize production, control prices, and become the world's indispensable supplier. The result? Today, China's dominance is staggering. It accounts for around 70% of the world's rare earth mining and close to 90% of the processing. Its influence also extends to the refining of other critical materials like lithium and cobalt. This isn't just an economic advantage, it's a strategic weapon. Beijing has shown it's willing to use this leverage, restricting exports during disputes and effectively holding the world's high-tech and green energy industries hostage. For the United States and its allies, this dependency isn't just an economic vulnerability, it's a profound national security threat. This is where Greenland enters the picture. As Arctic ice recedes, it's revealing what could be one of the largest undeveloped caches of rare earth deposits on the planet. The Tanbreeze deposit, for example, is described as one of the world's largest sources of heavy rare earths. For proponents of the purchase, the logic seems simple. Why depend on a rival when you can own the source? It's a compelling story, but it's one that conveniently ignores some very inconvenient facts, like Greenland's 2021 law banning uranium mining, which effectively halted the development of the massive Kvanefjeld deposit due to the presence of radioactive materials. The case for buying Greenland is built on three main arguments: resources, strategy, and history. It's pitched as a clean, simple solution to a messy global problem. First, the resources. Proponents point to geological surveys suggesting Greenland is a treasure trove of neodymium, dysprosium, and terbium, elements essential for the permanent magnets that power everything from wind turbines to EVs. Buying the island, in this view, means securing a near-endless supply and breaking China's monopoly. The U.S. could become a key supplier to its allies, fundamentally shifting the balance of resource power. The second pillar is strategic location. The Arctic is the new frontier of geopolitical competition. As melting ice opens new shipping lanes, Both Russia and China are boosting their presence in the region. Proponents argue that owning Greenland would provide an unparalleled vantage point. The U.S. already operates Patuffik Space Base there under a treaty with Denmark, but they claim leasing isn't the same as owning. Full ownership would provide a permanent, unshakable strategic foothold. Finally, there's the appeal to American history. The Louisiana Purchase in 1803 doubled the size of the country. The purchase of Alaska from Russia in 1867, once ridiculed as Seward's folly, turned out to be a masterstroke, yielding immense natural resources. Proponents frame the Greenland idea in this same epic tradition as a visionary act of statecraft. When you combine these arguments, the idea sounds almost plausible. It seems to solve the resource problem, checkmate rivals, and follow a proven historical path. It's a clean narrative, but reality is rarely so clean. The grand vision of acquiring Greenland collapses under the immense weight of practical and economic reality. The plan isn't just unworkable, it's fiscally catastrophic. First, let's talk cost. A hypothetical purchase price of $1 trillion is often thrown around, but that would be little more than a down payment. Greenland is a territory with virtually no infrastructure. There are almost no roads connecting its towns. Travel is by boat or helicopter. For perspective, a proposed 170-kilometer gravel road to connect just 2 settlements was estimated to cost around $79 million. Now imagine building the infrastructure for a modern mining industry from scratch in one of the world's harshest environments. You'd need deep water ports for massive ore carriers, new power plants. A single processing plant could require huge amounts of power, and entire towns for workers, all in a place where construction costs are estimated to be dramatically higher than elsewhere. A recent expansion of 3 airports in Greenland, a far simpler task, was projected to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. The true cost wouldn't be $1 trillion, it would be many trillions, spent over decades before a single ton of usable metal is produced. This leads to the resource fallacy. The minerals are in the ground, but getting them out is another story. The Arctic climate limits operations to just a few months a year. And rare earths aren't in neat veins. They're widely dispersed, meaning you have to process immense amounts of rock for a small yield. The ore grades at some of Greenland's major deposits are known to be relatively low. And then there's processing, the very bottleneck this is supposed to solve. China dominates processing because it has tolerated the severe environmental fallout, which includes toxic acids and low-level radioactive waste. Building these facilities in the West is a monumental challenge due to environmental regulations. The idea that the U.S. could just set up shop on a pristine Arctic island is naive. Greenland has its own government and environmental standards, including the aforementioned ban on uranium mining that has already stopped one major project in its tracks. Spending trillions to capture a global rare earth market valued between $8 and $12 billion in 2024 is simply economic insanity. Finally, there's the geopolitical fallout. Greenland is home to 57,000 people with their own government, culture, and aspirations. The idea of a sale has been repeatedly rejected by both Greenlandic and Danish officials. Recent polls show that a vast majority of Greenlanders, around 85%, are opposed to becoming part of the United States. Any attempt to force the issue would be a violation of international law and would rupture the very alliances that form the bedrock of U.S. security. The real solution, a smarter, more realistic path. The folly of the Greenland plan is even clearer when you see the pragmatic strategies the U.S. and its allies are already pursuing. Breaking China's mineral monopoly is critical, but the path isn't a single, grandiose real estate deal. It's a diversified approach focused on the entire supply chain. First, the focus is shifting from extraction to the real bottleneck, processing. For years, the West mined minerals only to send them to China for refining. That's changing. The U.S. government is actively investing in new, cleaner processing technologies and facilities for a range of critical minerals, from rare earths to tungsten and gallium. Second, the strategy involves strategic partnerships. Instead of trying to buy a country, the U.S. is deepening cooperation with allies like Australia, Canada, and European nations to build resilient supply chains. This includes co-investing in mining and processing projects and aligning policies to encourage private investment. These collaborations create a network of suppliers, making the whole system less vulnerable. This model is already at work in Greenland itself, through partnership, not purchase. Critical Metals Corp, which is acquiring the Tanbreeze deposit, is an international company with plans to develop the site. The company is currently working to complete its feasibility studies. This approach achieves the same goal, securing access to minerals, without the astronomical cost and political fallout of an acquisition. The U.S. can support such projects through financing mechanisms from institutions like the Export-Import Bank. Finally, the most durable solution is reducing demand through innovation. This includes massive investment in battery recycling, which creates a circular economy for materials like lithium and cobalt, and research into alternative materials that can replace rare earths. Every recycled battery is a mine that doesn't need to be dug. This long-term strategy is less dramatic than buying a country, but it's far more sustainable and effective. When you peel back the layers, the plan to buy Greenland isn't a stroke of geopolitical genius. It's a dramatic, overly simple answer to a problem that has better, cheaper, and more effective solutions. The allure of a single, decisive move is powerful, but it ignores the messy realities of geology, engineering, economics, and diplomacy. The real path to resource independence doesn't lie in planting a flag on an icy island. It lies in the patient, difficult work of innovation, investment, and international partnership. It means building new processing plants, funding research into recycling, and strengthening alliances. This approach is slower and less sensational, but unlike the Greenland fantasy, it has the advantage of actually working. The United States faces a real challenge in securing its critical mineral supply chains. But throwing trillions of dollars at a plan that would alienate allies and trample on the rights of another people is the definition of a failed strategy. So if buying Greenland isn't the answer, the question for the next decade becomes even more critical. Are the current strategies of domestic investment and allied partnerships enough to truly break the chains of dependency, or is a more radical approach, one we haven't even considered yet, necessary to secure the future? Let me know what you think in the comments below.